Hi guys, we're the Jersey Comic Crew, and on today's episode, we're doing a review of Dark Knight's Death Metal. Stay tuned to hear all of our thoughts on it, and especially where we rank it.
Hey everybody, Chris and Rob here at the Jersey Comic Crew. You are here to talk about Dark Knight Death Metal, the full review of this massive event that DC just finally finished. Started right after, I guess, COVID kind of let up on the comic releases, Rob.
Yeah.
And we are going to try to navigate this as best as possible. If any of you have read it and are coming here to listen to a review and what other people thought or were confused, our goal is to not confuse you more. It is, by lack of other more intelligent words, dense. Yes. It is a massively dense book. There are a lot of tendrils going every which direction. There's a lot of characters. So we're not going to go through a Rob's recap style this time. We figured that would be a lot. We're just going to start talking about this event, what we liked, what we didn't like, big things that happened. So, Rob, in your opinion, when this event started, where were you? Where were you mentally? What'd you like?
So when the event started, I'm full of hope like every other event. The book starts off, we see the state of the world. And in the first issue, we have Wonder Woman this whole story is a Wonder Woman story, guys. As much as it was trademarked as like a Trinity, it's really a Wonder Woman story, and which is great because we're seeing more and more Wonder Woman in the DC universe in big badass ways. She takes a chainsaw of truth, an invisible chainsaw, and cuts through the Batman Who Laughs and kills him. Yes, it was a part of his plan, but just seeing the imagery was great. It
was metal, that's for sure.
It's metal, exactly. Like Chris was saying, this book is very dense. I feel like if you could take a third of the plot of all the twists and turns that they had here, took it out and just let their comic breathe a little bit more, I think it would have been a much better story. Yep. One thing I wanted to talk to you guys watching, and something with Chris right now, when the Batman Who Laughs dies, right? And essentially he gets put into a new body, and he gets put into a blue body. They don't mention it in the book, but we all know it's Dr. Manhattan's body. And apparently when he gets put into there, he gets a lot of the Dr. Manhattan powers, and he becomes this larger than life character. He becomes the Darkest Knight. I liked that. I thought it was cool. And I guess that's to make use of Doomsday Clock, which is another convoluted event with Watchmen and Justice League, to make that viable here. And it didn't feel necessary. I feel like you could have still got the same thing and not introduced the whole Watchmen characters into it. But I feel like a lot of this book was making up for weird decisions by DC's corporate and DC strategy,
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm usually the first person, Rob, to be like, oh, it's Scott Snyder, here's my money. Greg Capullo, here's my money. And this definitely felt like the reason Snyder's stepping back from DC superhero comics for a while. Because, man, this is a lot to take in. And the amount of storytelling and kind of like, here, Scott, you have to get us to this new area we're going to for 2 months.
Exactly. Right?
Seemed almost overwhelming to anybody, even the reader. And if you're the reader overwhelmed, you're going to be like almost lost in the sauce, right? Like, and
I like that.
I thought the first issue was really solid where, we had, the kind of explanation of where we left off from Scott's Justice League, like Perpetua's in the universe. She's destroying everything. How do we counteract that? The world's different. Almost like, it reminded me almost of like a dark Mad Max style battle world from Secret Wars.
Yes.
But in the form of the DC universe. And I do agree. I think the conversation that should have been in that book a lot more about Dr. Manhattan and how that body is there and
why that's there.
And why it's there. Because the last thing we see is he kind of dies or is rebirthed through this like kid named Clark, and he's almost trying to be more like Superman, but then Wally West has his power with the Mobius chair. There wasn't a lot of explanation of how all that intertwines, and if you watched our last video, we mentioned leading up to this event all these separate things happening, but there really wasn't something that kind of put them back into perspective or narrowed it down.
Yes, I feel like there needed to be something else before this, when you talk about Wally West getting his powers, right? Getting Dr. Manhattan, some of his powers, I guess. And this whole idea of crisis energy, like this book went a little too crazy for me, like with crisis energy, non-crisis energy, energy of truth. Like it didn't have enough time to actually sit and breathe and allow you to understand it. Like in Scott's Justice League run, when he talks about the different energies, like the negative speed force, right? And he talked about the ultraviolet spectrum for the lanterns. Like those ideas and concepts had room and time to breathe over his run, and you were able to easily digest it. I know we're talking about a lot of the negatives. There was a lot of good things, like the fact that the whole world got rearranged into a bat symbol. I thought that was fun and quirky and cool.
That was cool.
I like the fact that there was a secret crypt for where superheroes die. I like that idea of that being in the world, so that way their bodies are preserved, like for the things they've done. And we saw Batman, who was a Black Lantern because he died and somehow was still using it on himself.
No one knew he died.
Right? And then he's like, I need to get armies, and I'm going through these crypts and get these people to learn their powers. I thought that was a cool scene. I really liked that. And I liked what they did with Superman and how he was getting
what they did with Superman.
Infected with the anti-life equation. Like the things they did to the trilogy for this end of the world, end of the multiverse crisis, I thought was really good. I thought they hit the nail on the head on where those characters would be if it was the end of the world.
Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely loved what they did with Superman. I'm a sucker because I'm a 90s kid, so you give me Superman with long hair, it's automatically so much more badass for some reason. You know, not the mullet, but just like the long, he had like the long rocker head hair.
And then he had like part rock on his body, like Doomsday.
Yeah, he had a Darksied arm as he was infected and tortured for years with the anti-life equation. He had kryptonite embedded in his chest plate. Just awesome, cool stuff that they let Scott kind of play with. I even loved Greg's design of Wonder Woman. I loved Wonder Woman with the blue hair on the bottom. I loved her armor. That chainsaw was insanely badass. But yeah, in the middle of this kind of story, you know, and I did like some of the stuff. I really liked interactions with Jarro and Jonah Hex and Harley in a lot of those aspects.
They were good. They were good secondary characters that kind of like break the tension, if you will.
But I was waiting for them to have the payoff.
There was no payoff.
There's no payoff for a lot of characters, and they kind of gave you in the beginning, like, here's some cool stuff and some new characters interacting with characters you don't see a lot. Like, when does Harley interact with Swamp Thing?
Well, here's my thing with Harley and Swamp Thing interacting. I thought it was fine. It's not too crazy.
Or Jonah Hex.
Yeah, Jonah Hex, I thought. But my thing with Jarro, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Jarro, obviously, is the baby form of Starro. Insert Starfish picture here. He's the universe's strongest telepath. And he believes he's like Robin to Batman, right? They have like this
Batman's
cute thing. He's like, "Oh, Dad!" And he's like, not in front of the people, right? Like, you built this up, and they needed Jarro to do this plan at the end to fight at different parts to try to take down Perpetua, right? And then to take down the Batman Who Laughs, or the Darkest Knight, as he's now called. And I'm like, okay, Jarro's so important. Where's Jarro's payoff? Where is he becoming big giant Starro and fighting off a legion? Like I said, this book was so convoluted with other plots. These other things that could have excelled kind of got pushed under the surface. Now, as much as I did like the things that they did in the Trinity, I thought Wonder Woman's chainsaw was used maybe once or twice and not really used at all, and it was marketed heavy. And I'm like, I would have loved to seen that used more. Batman, I thought was fun. Like, I don't think they did anything wrong with Batman. With Superman, my issue is not what they did with Superman, but more so with Darkseid. Because you saw Darkseid, and like you saw, he obviously had some physical changes. He had horns on the side of his cheek, right? And he looked stronger and more powerful. But there was no explanation onto why he really looked that way or why he was stronger. And he was kind of like a somewhat important character in this. He kind of stopped Wonder Woman a couple of times from doing what she needed to do to get the job done. And he's like, you were going to lose anyway. Don't do it. I'm like, I don't know why or how Darkseid got to that point and to make him that much of an important character in the story.
Yeah, no, I agree. And he was, you know, we see him kind of in the middle of the World Forge.
Mm-hmm. That's
where Wonder Woman gets like thrown into, and that was a great scene. I loved Lobo in this series. I wanted more Lobo
I think
in everything in this series.
Lobo was great because it was like an army of Lobos. The main man, he had to hunt down the Alfred boxes for Lex to get all those nth metal. Also, why are they called Alfred boxes? I have no idea. But like, I did like Lobo, kind of like almost like a redemption arc for Lobo as a character, like, right? Because every time like you see him, he's a jerk, he's a bounty hunter, and he's like, the main man knows this is a solo mission. I'm going in there. I ain't coming back. I'm going to save the world. It's cool. I'm like, all right, Lobo. I like it. I thought they did fine with Lobo.
Yeah, I liked it too. I thought when they got there and Darkseid just kind of cradling the Anti-Monitor as a baby almost. And
yeah,
I don't understand the thought process of turning Darkseid into like a glorified babysitter. Like when you have all the villains helping you fight this, right? There's a one shot where I think it's the last 52 one shot where Hal Jordan goes away for a minute and is going to like this area where like he had this huge battle and a bunch of people died, and he sees Sinestro there, and he gives Sinestro a Green Lantern ring for this fight.
Yeah,
because these people don't fear you. You know what I mean? Like fear's not going to help you. And him and Sinestro have this great conversation about it. But you have all these villains now helping you, and wouldn't you want the best of the best in the DC universe, like Darkseid and Doomsday, kind of like in that fray with you? So I don't understand what the thought process was besides like, hey, we didn't forget about Darkseid, here he is.
That's what it felt like. It was like, oh, hey, we didn't forget about this character, insert that character here.
Yeah.
One thing I need your help, Chris. And
yeah,
I don't know anything about Superboy Prime or Superman Prime because he was there and he was trying to fight Wonder Woman and then he stopped and became good. One, why was he thrown in there? Two, why was he thrown in there? Who is he? Why is he a big deal? I've always heard stories that he's the strongest Superman, but then he did nothing after we first saw him and he decided to help. Am I wrong?
Yeah, like yes and no. There was a one shot, and again, we'll talk about the one shot and the worst curse word in comics tie-ins later. But yeah, there was a one shot called Secret Origin, and it was all about Superboy Prime. And Superboy Prime is basically the evil Superboy who is extremely powerful. He was from a different Earth, and they had an origin that Jeff Johns was a part of, that Snyder was a part of. All the biggest kind of writers were a part of this Secret Origin book. Okay. I was like, okay, I need to pick this up because if all these guys are on it, clearly it's going to be really important. And it absolutely, to me, was the best part of this event. And
really?
Yeah, it took Superboy Prime down to the like origin that was never really told about him. It kind of starts off like he's with the Justice League preparing to help them fight, the Darkest Night and Perpetua. And no one's talking to him because everyone hates him because they've all been killed by him in the past or something. It's kind of like when Frieza has to join in the tournament in Dragon Ball.
Look at you making an anime reference. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It was Dragon Ball, I know it. But he's there, and the only person that comes up to him is Crypto, because it's Crypto. He's a dog, right? Yeah, he's like, oh, I know you. Like, you're Clark's cousin. And he's like looking at him. He's like, go away, dog. Like, you don't want to be around me kind of thing. And it's Crypto. Like, Crypto doesn't care. He's a dog. So they go into this origin where he was this kind of like grew up like Clark Kent in his world on a farm with the Kents, didn't have any powers, wanted powers, and would read comic books about Superman. And it kind of gave the origin like all of us comic kids, regardless of who your favorite comic book characters. I connected it with very strongly because I'm a Superman fan. But it's growing up basically wanting to be Superman, wanting to get out of your situation. He was picked on. He was, bullied. His best friend was this girl who he falls in love with, and they start dating. And then one day he is trying to, there's a kid across the street, and he tries to help the kid, and he lifts the car, and he has powers, and that changes his life. But then it's almost like the moral of the story is the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because everything he tries to do positive just ends up blowing up in his face.
Okay.
And he loses his world and he loses everything. So it just like breaks him down into this dark, and he's like, finally, like, I'll just be what you wanted me to be this whole time, like screaming at the universe type deal. And it's actually a tragic, sad story. And that character actually ends up back into death metal, making the biggest sacrifice where he fights off the Darkest Night by himself.
Yeah.
With no like upgrade, and fights him off long enough for the Justice League to recuperate and kind of enact and by that time for Wonder Woman to come in and kind of save the day after she gets her new like golden suit
yeah, she turns into like the god of truth because they untied the knots of time, which are the crisis, and then she got power from truth. Like, I get her getting power from truth, I get that. I don't understand the untying of knots in history.
I think that's based on partially Greek mythology.
Okay.
So in Greek mythology, the oracles are the ones that kind of tell you your life, right? There's all these different strings or ropes or tethers that detail everyone's life. And if they cut one of those, you die. That's how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if they get tangled, I guess, and weaved, then it causes universal issues. I think that was what the undertone was, but it was not explained well.
The finale was also really cool. The great battle scene, I loved it, right? Seeing Wonder Woman as a golden god fight the Darkest Knight who beat Perpetua because he just fused with Dr. Manhattan's body. So is Dr. Manhattan one of these people? I still don't know who Dr. Manhattan is comparatively to everything, but that's besides the point. Apparently that's strong enough for him to beat the one who created everything. Then Wonder Woman with truth and hope and everything else was able to beat the Darkest Knight. But that part of the battle I didn't even really care about. It was the battle on the ground. Like seeing Superman, Bizarro, and all those people go against the other evil Superman. Seeing the Bat family go against all the Robins and seeing the Joker die. Seeing Batgirl die. Seeing everybody die around him. And then Batman do this ultimate moment like, no, I got this. Your army and my army are now mine because I have the Lantern Death Ring in my chest because that's who I am. I brought everybody
why
back.
would I leave it on my hand that you just chopped off?
Exactly. I was like, that's so badass. Superman gets stronger again. He's like, don't worry like about my cells. I come in there, like Luthor comes in, explodes a black hole. Like that part of the stuff was cool.
Yeah.
And the whole, giant titans fighting each other. It was fine. It wasn't great. I think I was just tired and exhausted from the event, all the convolutedness.
Yeah, especially with how you read it all at once. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I like to read events
not having
all at once.
Couple weeks. You're insane.
Let me tell you right now that works for most events. Most events, reading it all together, it's a pleasure. It is straight like it's the best thing in the world. Reading this all together, like I read this all twice. I read it all last week, and then I read it all again yesterday, and I still don't know what's going on. And it's just like I liked lots of parts of it. I don't think it's great. Chris, do you have any other thoughts of things you liked and you didn't like before we get into reviews?
Yeah, no, I think I'm in the same alley as you are. I liked some of the little moments. The Batman moment with the ring was probably the best part of the ending for me.
Mm-hmm.
I like some of the small stuff like Arthur's mom was Orm in a different universe.
Oh, I did like that. I did.
Like
their worst fears. I thought that was cool.
Like the worst fears thing was really cool. So like stuff like that. But overall, it almost was like to me, if we confuse them, they won't be upset with us clearly just trying to focus on this.
I think
you know what I mean.
It could be that,
and I hope it's not. But it's one of those things where it was like so much was thrown in your plate that you're so worried about getting through it and figuring it out that you're not looking at the overarching picture of the company.
Like, look at the shiny hand over here. Don't look at what I'm doing over here.
Like, literally, there's a hand over here, like in Super Smash Brothers. And I think that's a part of the biggest problem because you have events like this that are so packed, and 7 issues weren't enough, right? Because tie in. I think between issue 4 and 5, there was something like, with the regular Justice League book included, there's like 8 or 9 tie-ins between those 2 books alone.
And it didn't even help.
Like, that's not okay. You know what I mean? And the way that comics used to be done is the best way, where you take the time to flesh out the stories in their own respective arcs. if the entire Speed Force story and the Wally story and the Speed Metal story that was a one-shot was in Flash, that draws people to go get Flash.
Correct.
And they may stick on after that. You know what I mean? So I don't understand the aspect of not fleshing out the story. Snyder's very good at that. That's why his Batman runs top 5 all time. But this, to me, this new method of let's throw everything in an event, we'll do this and this and this, we'll try to see what sticks to the wall, is not working for me.
For me, I don't have so much of an issue with tie-ins because when you read tie-ins, they're supposed to enhance the story they get with the main issues. So you could read them or not read them, and you'll get a better effect. Like reading this on its own, it should still be a good event, and it's not. It's not great. But even though we get the comment with the Bat family saying, "Were our shorts that short?" They're like, "No, it's shorter." When they're seeing all the Robins, I thought that was funny. But
that was funny, and some of the tie-ins are definitely tie-ins, like the Secret Origin one-shot that engulfed Superboy Prime. That's a tie-in. You know, some of the other ones, the Trinity Crisis one was a tie-in. Justice League is naturally a tie-in because that book's continuing. But if you're sending me a $7-8 tie-in that is just like 6 stories in one, that by the end of it, I'm like, I already forgot it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not necessary. Or throw that into the main storylines to make it easier to follow. And I don't know. I really hope this isn't the main type of storytelling we're going to get going forward, where everything's kind of like thrust into events and tie-ins and everything instead of just let's relax a little and just tell the stories.
Yeah, it's not the issue here. It's not the tie-ins. It's that they try to do too much in this.
Yeah.
And they didn't. This, instead of being a 7-issue story, probably should have been a 12-issue.
Yeah, it should have been a max series.
It should have been a max series, and taking the time to fully flush things out. And by the time we get to the end of it, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But I don't know. I think it's time to get to the ratings. I'm going to go first. I'm giving it a C. I think I don't really like giving it anything lower than that. But the reason I'm not giving it, there was a lot of things I did like, a lot of visuals. Like for me, I'm always going to remember. For me, I'm always going to remember. One more time. For me, I'm always going to remember this story as the story with the chainsaw of truth, Batman as the Black Lantern, all these great fight scenes, beautiful artwork, post-apocalyptic world. But like, there's just so much thrown on top of it. I can't enjoy. I don't enjoy it as much as I want to. I don't think this is something I'm going to buy for my collection at all. I think it's something I read and that's it. I'm glad I read it. I think it almost taints the other stuff that went before it. That's how convoluted this was for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm probably going to go C- on my end.
One more. You always start with Try to start with something.
Okay.
A little smoother.
I'm totally with that. And I'm probably going to go C- personally. And I love Snyder. I think he's a phenomenal writer. I love Capullo. I loved his artwork throughout. But when you have we're talking about comic books here. It's not a movie where you could watch it and it's also an experience. Comics, they have to be worth the price of admission for these stories. Yes. And all these books, I don't think there was a $4 book among them.
Probably not.
Besides Justice League being the main tie-in. Even the main books you're looking at $5-6, and the tie-ins are $5 and up. And that's a lot of money. And they did not give me the bang for the buck. And it's something that I, of course, probably, knew most likely going in, but for the sake of the show and you guys wanting to get all that knowledge and reading everything. And also with comics, it's rereadability, right?
True.
Am I going to read this again, or am I putting this in a bag and board and it's going to sit in a box for the next 40 years?
Yeah. That's.
And to me, this is one of those that's just going to sit in the box. So unfortunately, I was not a big fan of this. This had a lot of messy tendrils, sort of the way Ten of Swords had, which I didn't even read every chapter because it was so many different books.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of upsetting how the ending is kind of just pushing a narrative and pushing to me, a corporate agenda at the bottom line. That's what it is.
So guys, we want to hear your thoughts on Justice League. Sorry, not Justice League. on Dark Knight's death metal. Did you read the whole event? Did you enjoy it? What are your thoughts? Let us know down below.
And guys, thanks so much for watching. Give us a thumbs up, like, really helps the channel out a lot. If you're brand new, subscribe, turn on those notifications. You don't want to miss anything else. We're going to talk about what's going to happen with the DC Universe next after Dark Knight's Death Metal is now finished. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I'm Chris, and that's Rob, and we'll see you guys next time.